You know the rules, and so do I. I've been singing a lot more this season 6.
The people want to hear it. You're a bomb singer.
Thank you.
What do you think the people really want to hear you sing? It's gotta be, like, some Marina
Maybe.
to, like, cold open the episode.
If you're listening to this episode post-release, you should like, comment, and subscribe, and post somewhere where we will see it. The Discord is the best place. What song you would like me to sing in some other episode, and I'll sing a bit of it. If it's a song I know, and it's not a song I hate.
Very important.
Yeah, those are 2 important things. They're gonna be like, Baby Shark!
Don't have bad taste.
Yeah, don't have bad taste. Good taste only. Welcome to Bonus Experience. This is a podcast with a deeper look at the play experience and the finer details of running and writing games. And we are 2 queer people speaking with authority about games. And yes, we swear, die mad about it.
Die so fucking mad. Holy shit, fuck you. No, I'm just kidding, I love you guys.
I am your Polestar host, the pillar upon which this is founded. I am Monica. You know me. You love me. I'm in every episode. I've been in every episode since the beginning, and none of you are tired of me, and for that I'm very grateful. I am an industry professional, a developer, a designer, and an author. And I am here with MJ.
Hi!
Please introduce yourself. Tell the people who you are and what you're about.
Hello, I am the little bird on Monica's shoulder, heckling and heralding. My name is MJ Monleon. I am also a designer, writer, and score of other things besides, and Monica's good buddy, which is why she has finally granted my long-standing request to come in here and terrorize all of you.
We have been co-authors for a little while now, so...
A little while.
A little while now. I think it was time. Your time had come.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we wanted to sit down and hang out and kind of have a ongoing discussion about the concept of competitive design. And, like, I know that you and I are pretty big into examining this in video games, but this is a tabletop podcast. So, but I also think there's a fair overlap in competitive tabletop style games, which usually fall under, like, card games, board games, and minis games, right? RPGs are usually not competitive. Though I have played competitive D&D a while ago. It was a 4th edition.
Oh.
We literally held a D&D tournament in the style of classic old school D&D tournament. Because D&D also used to have tournament modes, right? Like, it was 4th edition, which was actually pretty good for this sort of thing. And you play competitive D&D by, you form a team, you, like, build your characters together, and then the point is to survive the dungeon that everybody plays. And whoever gets through it the fastest with the least number of casualties wins.
Okay.
Yep.
That's fascinating to me, honestly, because I think that's one axis of competition right there, where you're not strictly within the confines of the game itself. You are not directly competing against other people. You are collaborating, and it becomes like sort of a team sport benchmark. It's like you got the PvP competition, or it's like, all right, loser, fight me, meat to meat fighter, and then you have the let us find progressively more and more deranged ways to break this scenario open competition. And I think that's so interesting because within the context of trad games like D&D, Exalted, Pathfinder, and so on, I see so very little design that is explicitly about this kind of thing. I think in part because of the fact that, it's very easy for players to find some way to completely break something, but there's no like leaderboards, right? For like any % Tomb of Horrors, what's your best ride? I kind of wish there was now, actually. That'd be pretty cool.
I mean, that was an important part of classic D&D's design. It was why the GM's called a judge in a lot of old school modules and stuff. And like, D&D has its roots in war games. And literally the word campaign comes from the idea of playing an extended war game.
She spitting facts.
Literally where we get that word from. So, like, the concept of, and that is also, I think, where the strain of adversarial DM DNA still lingers from, right? Like, we have turned our gray wolves into dogs pretty thoroughly, but like some of that has not gone away, and some of that is where that comes from, because it was like the Tomb of Horrors literally was just Gygax being like, "Yeah, fuck you, beating too many of these dungeons. People are winning too much. I'm gonna make one that's super hard." And,
right,
and specifically unfair, right? Like,
right.
And then, like, a lot of the cultural zeitgeist forgot that and are just like, modules should be hard, and missing the fact that, like, the point was to be PvE, right? Like, you have your team, the environment is run by the GM, and you would compete as a team, not against you. PvP was never part of it. It was always about, like, completing the dungeon, defeating the enemies, winning the module, or not, because... You know.
I wonder, though, what it would just look like to see a more modern, wholesale reconceptualization through the lens of intra-community competition in engaging the material. I think we've all seen material that's more focused on the PvE. I think Lancer is probably the biggest contemporary example of something that just takes PvE as its goal for trad gaming and just goes absolutely apeshit with it. But even that, I don't... there's no leaderboards for Lancer. They have some great memes, but not quite that. So I wonder what it might look like to try and design for that, because there's a huge challenge in doing it.
I agree. It would be fun to look at something like Lancer or like Gubat Manhwa or what's the other one? Strike! That's what it's called. There's like all these little like... So the thing why you could do this with 4th edition was because 4th edition was supremely balanced in ways that made people very angry. Sort of in the same way that people are really mad about a lot of Essence's balance changes.
Oh boy, we'll get there.
Yeah, we sure will. But Essence is not designed to be a competitive game, but you could maybe take the chassis of that and then turn it into that sort of thing, but that's a whole nother kettle of fish. But like, maybe look at the stuff that sort of took more direct inspiration from 4th edition, and then take that framework and make it into a specific competitive game.
Yeah. I think... Thinking on this a little more, what I think what would be a key ingredient to the success of this kind of thing would be regular content to challenge people. And I think that could potentially be some kind of part of a business model, because it's like, if people are continuously looking for new things to break within this paradigm, and it's like every 3 months or 4 months we got a new release, suddenly you just have a regular stream of shit right there, you got money from that.
Yeah.
It's like live balance. It's like how every game these days is...
You could, like, this...
live service.
So, the other cool thing, you just made me think of game live service and all that stuff, and like one of the big struggles, right, with balancing a tabletop game is that it's very, very hard to real-time update a book someone already owns.
Yup. Oh, yeah.
But in today's day and age, a lot of that stuff is, like, tons of games are just PDF now. Like, there's no physical book to buy. And if you wanted to do something like this and be on top of the regular update, balance, and design, maybe you just don't release book ever. Maybe it's only ever PDF. Which, PDFs can be printed and spiral bound and preserved or whatever, but if you're like, hey, I'm gonna consistently update this.
Right. It's like you get to patch stuff out.
I know we wanted to talk about this topic because we were very passionately discussing the idea of, like, competitive high-level play, how to balance that against casual play.
Oh, yes.
Which is really more of a video game thing than a tabletop thing, but, like, this is also a problem in Magic. I think it's also a big thing in Warhammer. It's definitely a big thing in the Malifaux community, which is small as fuck, but it's still a thing.
Yeah.
And, like, the philosophical question, I guess, that we were discussing, I'll just go right into it. Let's just talk about this for a minute.
Let's go.
Is that, like, your high-tier competitive level players are such a small population of your player base that, like, do you balance towards them? In Magic, maybe you do, because there's literally a pro Magic scene, and that's like people's livelihoods and stuff like that. Do you do that for something like Malifaux, which only has like a couple thousand people playing in the whole world, right? It's such a small fan base that, like, you probably know the names of all your high tier players because there's like 12 of them.
All 12 of them.
Yeah, like that was sort of the case in 2nd edition when I was playing it competitively. I think that's become less of the case in 3rd edition because COVID moved the competitive scene online.
Yeah.
So there's this big community of competitive play that plays over Vassal, the free program that you and I played on a bunch of times.
Pandora laughing.gif.
Yes. Yeah. And like the big international tournament just moved online. And that's still a big group in that I think there's like maybe 100 people in it. Which is very small compared to like the Overwatch competitive scene.
Yeah.
Or pick a video game, right? Where there's literally
Paladins.
Paladins is also very small comparatively, but like in a video game sense. But like Paladins has tens of thousands of people.
This is true.
So let's go into our thoughts on like, as the designer, where do you pick your balance? Like, and I guess this also sort of ties in with some RPG design because I've had to sort of struggle with this with Essence too, not because of a competitive aspect, but a difference between an experienced level player aspect and a basic level player aspect, right? Someone who really knows what they're doing versus someone who has no fucking clue. And like, where do you make your choices to help who?
I think that's a really good question. And with all of those types of questions, this is always going to be a calibration. There isn't a right answer. There's only various configurations that you can put things into, which will accommodate or prioritize more things over other things. Because you can't get everything for everyone in every way unless you design like multiple rule sets, which I guess you could do, but no one does that because it's impractical and also kind of feels bad as a fan, and I think probably also as a developer. My thought as someone, I mean, you know me, I'm kind of the obsessive type. I like to take something and stretch it out like putty between my fingers and see all the delightful ways I can break it. But the key there is that I like to be able to go from having an understanding where something feels at least moderately welcoming to me as a new player to something that rewards my investment. I think there's a difference between balancing for the hypothetical murder munchkin, but I think there should be depth and a degree of mastery reward to crunchier systems. I feel like without that, systems feel shallow and lacking in depth or staying power. And I think, to bring it onto Essence, one of the great strengths of Exalted historically, and definitely Essence, is that it really does reward you for learning how to breathe in the combat system a little bit and learning how to prioritize. And I think that if it didn't have that, it would be much lesser. And while I don't think Essence is balanced for like the most optimum break it Strix solving approach to combat, I think that it feels really good to go from being a noob, I attack the withering, to like having your shit down, right? Yeah. And knowing when to make the withering attack versus build power versus what have you, blah, 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 blah.
I mean, that's great because that was the goal. I have played so much fucking Exalted that I know that, like, one, I know that the games where it's just like, we're gonna just try to ruin this as much as possible are wildly in the minority.
Yeah.
People don't play like that. People do play like that, but there's such a small number that they're like a statistical outlier, right? And they're noisy about it on forums, and it's like 4 people who do shit like this. Most people use the game to tell a story and have fun, and that is the vast majority of the audience. And but you're right, there are those people who are just like, no, we're going to play this campaign, we're going to use the rules, we're going to get into it. That group of people, who is the vast majority, are also broken down between people who are very experienced and people who are brand fucking new. And since this was specifically supposed to be the on-ramp, it had to bridge the gap between those two people. So, like, we had to design things so that we had to do that specifically, right? It had to be not overwhelming to new people. Someone had to be able to look at it and go, all right, I get this. And it had to be fully playable with someone whose understanding of the game is just like, I roll?
Huh?
And also that had to be functional alongside someone who is like, I understand the tactical choice between making a build power action and making a withering attack. And those two people had to theoretically be able to play in the same game.
Yeah. In the same party. In the same whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
What do you feel about the concept of using essence for PvP between player characters?
This is right up there with people who were like, D&D 4th edition isn't balanced around PvP. And it's just like, yeah, it's a party game. It said so. This is the same thing. It is not, the core system balance is based around a group of people PvEing, right? Like, the storyteller uses the antagonists, which uses slightly different rules for everything.
There's a reason.
There's a reason for that, because the player character's abilities are not meant to be used entirely on other player characters. Like, what does an NPC do with one of the question askers?
Yeah.
Wait, you're the GM, you already have all that info, right? Like...
I don't know, maybe he'll just look soulfully into your eyes.
Yeah, I guess.
You got games on your phone?
And it is supposed to be asymmetrical. And, like, if you are running, like, specific PvP or tournaments, or, like, we used to call them twink fights in the early 90s, because the word twink meant overpowered character, and also sexy game. Like, we meant both of those things, but that was a common parlance for a term for someone who would make an OP character on purpose.
I'm so distressed by this information.
I mean, it did also have the gay meaning then, too. Just so you're aware. But, like, that was a common parlance for that type of... We call them munchkins now, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a word that was 100% used. And I have hosted a bunch of forum games and 2e tournaments that were just like OP character fights. Yeah. And I think the winner got like a drawing or something, or I wrote some fiction or whatever. And I wouldn't use essence for that. I just wouldn't. I mean, you can. Yeah. You can.
I don't think it's bad for it.
Yeah, like, you'll discover it's not made to do that. Yeah. But you might have fun. I'm not your dad. I'm not going to tell you to not do that.
I think it's just... Like, what I find more interesting than the ways that this is or is not accommodated in the system is the very impulse itself, and where that comes from, and how that has been historically encouraged or discouraged. It's like, it's the action figure mentality of it, you know? You get a guy who's cool, and I got a guy who's cool, and we want to make him fight and go... You know, like, just bash them together. No matter what, people are just going to want to do that. It seems like a pretty universal constant of tabletop systems that people are going to find a way to, like, let's make you and him fight, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, like, like I said, it's not meant to do that, but you could.
You could.
I'm not going to stop you.
I'm going to stop them, actually. I'm running on all fours to their houses as we speak.
Oh, you know.
Like Santa, except I'm going to take your computers.
Well, you know who to watch out for. So, back to the question of competitiveness, though. You know, maybe we just talk about the video game thing. Maybe we just get into it.
Let's get into it.
We have a shared background in competitive tabletop games quite as much to discuss that. So I read, I don't know if this is true, but I read on Tumblr, an accurate source of information, someone complaining about, like, the original Overwatch, and how apparently regular Overwatch updates to balance were for casual players, because that's the mass majority of their audience, even though, like, Overwatch has a thriving pro scene. And, like, every time they'd make changes for casual players, it would just absolutely upend high-level play. And then this is someone talking about, like, oh, this is Blizzard fucked up, you know, retaining their audience in every way, in classic Blizzard fashion, because they would balance towards casual players, but then they took away all the things that casual players really like the comics, like the story modes, like...
Or Mercy Alts.
Yeah. Right? They were, like, the tie-ins, the toys and whatnot, like, they stopped making things that casual fans liked, and so both alienated, and successfully alienated both types of players.
Right.
So, you know, as the designer of something with a huge base and, you know, two very different approaches to play, because, like, I don't want to say people who play video games casually are bad, even though, you know, some people are, but, like, people who play casually don't necessarily suck, they're just playing the game differently.
Yeah.
And, like, you can have an extremely skilled casual player. Like, that person can be very good for someone who is not trying to play, like, at a top tier.
I play Final Fantasy XIV.
Oh, yeah, talk about that.
Final Fantasy XIV, I think, does a relatively good job of accommodating for these things. I think in part because it has a degree of, like, variance. The content that it puts out is often scaled differently. There's default content, your basic dungeons, which you have 4 people going through, your default trials, which you have 8 people fighting. And then there's raids, which are, you have 8 people also, but they go through like basically a gauntlet. And you'll have 12 of these in a raid series. And each of these has versions that are more difficult. And because there's, I think they have a liberty that tabletop maybe doesn't necessarily, where they get to have different versions, but I also think because there's so often just 2 versions, you get to have a very clear delineation of the culture and expectations. I've never been flamed out for dying a few times in, Storm's Crown normal on 6.1, I want to say 6.2, which is a trial where you fight a harpy woman with the best hair you've ever seen in the world. But if I was doing Storm's Crown EX and I just kept dying over and over, that would be a problem. But I also wouldn't be doing it without a group that is explicitly here to try and clear this content. What I think this really comes down to, and what it does very well, is it manages expectations.
Yeah. I think it's like, at least it's really important when you are playing with a group of other people to have your expectation be set. Like, are we playing this at the level that is considered serious or whatever, or are we playing for fun?
Yeah.
And that shared expectation needs to be the same among the entire group, which gets progressively more difficult the bigger the group is.
Yeah.
It was also, like, this also made me think of the last time we had a little Paladins party, and your buddy, is her name actually Lisa? It's in the first half of her name. Okay. Your buddy Lisa, I was like, oh, let's play 2 tanks. And Lisa was like, you want to play the meta? And I was like, no, I just really like 2 tanks.
Lisa's an old hand with Overwatch, actually. She's,
I was like, no, this has nothing to do with wanting to be good. This has everything to do with the fact that playing 2 tanks is fun. It's super fun, actually. I understand that it is, I guess it's good, but, like, any 2 tanks is fun to me. It is, like, I know that there's probably a top-tier perfect option, but I'm just like, let me point tank. Someone else tank with me to help. Like,
when you think about this in the context of tabletop,
let's think about
like in Essence games. I ran a really long running campaign 2 of Essence, and one of my player characters slowly over time morphed into just full invincible sword princess mode, where she had a resting defense of, like, I had a homebrew single point, and the bitch herself, I say this with so much love, she stacked the +1 defense from that charm with, like, having a shield regularly in full defense, and it just got to the point where I was like, if I don't have a dice pool of, like, 12, 13, 14 dice before accuracy, I will literally never hit her with any attack. And this was entirely, like, in line with the system. If she had been taking basically any other martial art except for the single point that I had made as a homebrew, I would have been running into this. And so that just made me think of, like, I had no problem with this existing because I felt like I knew how to take the system math and amp it up, right? Because that is the other thing, sort of tying back into what we were discussing earlier and pursuant to even what we were talking about with video games. People just get better over time. Like the Final Fantasy XIV player base has gotten, and you see this with other games like League of Legends, has just gotten better over time. And by the time you get to people who are on the current content coming out this year, the past year, these people have cleared 6 patch paradigms, or 5 usually, of content. They know how to do this stuff, so they're looking for something that will challenge them. And the floor of expectations is like, if you threw a newbie who just finished A Realm Reborn into the 6.1 or 6.3 content, they just have their head fucking explode, or like their face melt like the Nazi in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like it would just, they're just not built for that yet. But once you have someone who's gone through the entirety of everything, yeah, they're good. And even in the League of Legends fan base, tricks that got acclaim at the time. I was just like crazy mechanically intensive, or oh, I didn't know you could do that, or oh, that's so hard. That's just normal. Like, it's truly insane to watch plays in League of Legends that were legendary ones. Like, this is going to mean nothing to you, but Lee Sin alt flash to redirect someone with the kick or to insect someone, that's literally not even noteworthy anymore, except if you do it maybe particularly well. That is expected.
Right.
And I don't think that has necessarily made the game any more inaccessible. I think it might have increased, like, the average skill floor to which a new player is expected to climb. But I don't think that that's necessarily an onboarding issue, if that makes sense.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm really hoping that if more Essence content happens, I would love, please, 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 oh my god, I will be a good girl, I will go to temple every fucking week. Just let me write, like, 10,000 words of the most detailed combat chapter storytelling advice that you have ever fucking seen. I will tell people how to run every and any kind of combat.
Storytellers vault that shit.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh, yeah, no, I should. I really should.
Do like a so you talking about Final Fantasy XIV kind of brings me back around to the first thing we talked about, which was competitive D&D, which goes all the way back to old school D&D, and like the idea of a raid where it's like we have a group of people, we've made our builds to deal with this specific thing, we're kind of doing it on a time limit, we have to overcome this gauntlet of challenges, and we have to fight this boss at the end, right? Like, that is the same idea as, like, the Tomb of Horrors, right? Like, the point is that it is hard, the point is that we will maybe not make it through the whole thing together, and then, you know, if we clear it, we win, right? But there's a lot of, like, we might not, right? The thing, the big difference is that, like, you know, MMOs are computer games, and so a lot of that statistical whatevers and, like, the management of a huge mob or whatever becomes a lot easier when a computer is doing that as opposed to one human being.
Yeah, seriously.
So yeah, like, I think the best balance changes both in... I'm going to talk about Malifaux and Magic because they're things I'm familiar with, but also, like, in video games, like, I think the best changes are ones that resolve some issues that affect competitive level play, and when that issue is resolved, it does not adversely affect casual play at all. Like, I think mostly about a couple patches ago, we were talking about a Paladin's change that made, like, one of Anara's things slightly less good, and it made a bunch of the casual people really upset, but it was one of those things that in competitive level play, her ability to basically, like, shit out point controlling environmental damage was super
Was this
good.
the walls?
No, it's her little thumper.
Oh, her Roomba.
her little Roomba. Yeah, well, it doesn't move, but, like, her little butt plug. It looks like a butt plug.
It does.
She puts down a little earthquake butt plug, and it
She's so
pulses
brave.
out damage. Her little rock butt plug. And, like, apparently not the wall build is bad for competitive level play, but the thumper build is good because you basically chip damage everybody who wanders in there. And
it's the lag kind of tight.
And then they made, I think, that slightly less good because it was overwhelmingly good at top tier play, and people were like, "Oh man, oh my guy," and like, I think you want to avoid changes that make your casual players feel bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely makes sense because it's like I always think of Overwatch and, like, the just absolute fucking nightmare that was Mercy ult, where she just blank revives someone, but also that was really, really cool. And taking that away and clipping her flight feels really bad. And over time, Overwatch, this was my biggest criticism, aside from the standardized meta, was that they would do bolds, unique, fun design, that was just fun to play out the box. And then they would slowly chip things away and take away the toys, essentially, that would leave characters more balanced for top end. But also just, like, take away the reason that you might have wanted to play the character in the first place. It's like if they made Kasumi a hit scan, or not a hit scan, like a projectile character, and they just, like, rebalanced her to not have, like, the I get line of sight, close range, I click on you a few
And
times,
then
I
you're
hit a
dead.
button. And and then acupuncture.
Yep.
And they just made her into another normal shoot, bang, bang type person. I wouldn't complain that much, fuck you,
I
Kasumi.
wouldn't complain that much if
But
she required some accuracy. That would be nice. Like, they did
it
reduce,
would, but
apparently, like, so here's the other thing that I want to talk about really briefly, because the Kasumi point is important. Like,
go.
so, like, where do you sacrifice your intention for the sake of balance? Because the intention was that she had the little hit scan thing, because she can't misfire or whatever, and she's supposed to play weird and different, right? Like, they wanted her to be a different style of DPS character. They wanted her to, like, have her little traps. They wanted her to be scary. They wanted her to kind of, like, play like a vengeful ghost. That is the intention. That's the intention, right? That's the design goal. It was originally way too fucking good, because her auto-hit cone was massive.
Oh god. It was disgusting. Oh my god.
Like, I am a super casual player. I think the game is really fun. I think I'm a pretty good casual player, but that's the level I'm playing at. And I am aware of that. And that's okay. I don't want to be super good. It's really fun. I like to play it while baked out of my mind. Like, I want to play with my friends while I'm stoned on a weekend for, like, several hours and just, like, enjoy the team aspect of it, right? This is a valid way to play, and I suspect that a lot of people are in the same boat as me. But, like, she was so OP, I fucking noticed. Yeah. Like, that's the other thing. You don't want to introduce an element to your game, especially not a game like Magic or like Malifaux, where it's so overpowered that everybody goes, "Oh no."
Yeah, that's a real failure state, isn't it?
Yeah, you want stuff that's not going to upend your high level play, and you want stuff that doesn't make your casual players feel bad, and you want stuff that isn't so OP all your casual players go, "Hey, wait a minute."
It's a balancing act.
It's a difficult balancing act. That's what we wanted to talk about.
One of the things. So I used to play League of Legends pretty religiously. I know. Your Honor, League of Legends, death. But I used to, and I still keep track of balance changes, because I find it really interesting to just, like, keep track of all of the little levers, because League of Legends has been for 12, 13 years at this point trying to keep a balance for people who play 8 hours a day, serious face, and, like, professionally, and people who just want to hop on. One of the things about League of Legends is you get to see them try and walk varying degrees of successfully that line of trying to balance for everyone. And that is a constant adjustment and sort of an impossible goal, but I think they do it better than basically anyone at Riot Games. And one of the things that you get to see about this is the various ways that they measure player impact, character strength, and balance on the various little levers they use. Like, when I think of that Inara thing, that's like, it does too much damage, so they nerfed the damage, but players are like, oh no, that feels bad. Or new players are like that, and higher end players are like, good. So I'm just thinking to myself, like, what if they, like, had a total nerf, maybe, but, like, they front-loaded the damage, so the first two pulses, or the first few pulses of it, do more damage, so new players still don't feel bad for using it, but I'm going to keep this thing on here for 12 seconds crazy control that you see for high-end players is not there anymore, right?
Right.
So the degree to which things impact the variability, the scaling of it, is something front-loaded or back-loaded? How interactive is it, right? What's the interactivity of it, I think, is one of the most potent levers, because in the case of Inara's famous butt plug, you go girl trans icon, if it's like, if the damage is front-loaded, that makes it a little less interactive, but it means that it's more reliable for doing something, right? For doing anything. Like, oh, I don't get to have this out for 8 seconds because Betty, break my neck, Betty, will, break it. Betty La Bomba will fire her demo grenades and she'll pop that shit before it can do its full DPS output, but you can guarantee varying degrees of it. Or, like, you can guarantee it more so if you front load the damage. And I think about that as a balancing tool a lot in the context of tabletop, because I also write for 3rd edition Exalted, which means I have had to become a master of finicky mechanics, and poisons and, like, environmental hazards are all standardized, right? essentially. You'll have a rate of however much damage per interval. Usually that interval is per round in combat, but it's also standardized for the purpose of tracking. And with video games, it's easier because you get the math offloaded to a machine, so it's easier to say, okay, we're going to apportion this math such and such. We're going to front load it, we're going to back load it, we're going to shave 5 off every interval. But for the sake of mental load in Exalted, we would probably not do something where it's like, it does 6 damage on the first tick, that whatever poison. The gamer girl bath water of Kimberly would do, like, I don't know, 10 million damage dice per per round, but it would not, like, diminish, you know? We would, like, just set a value, and we're not gonna make you keep track of the gamer girl bathwater losing its acidity as she melts her tier 3 subscribers, right? So that's a lever available to video games. It's not necessarily available to tabletop, because the biggest budget in any tabletop game is how many things can you reasonably make people keep track of. And this is theoretically mitigatable by providing online tools, which I think is generally underutilized, but also is like, you can only expect so much, you can only develop so much. Like, I think 3rd edition combat, as much as I love its finicky bullshit, would be like a million times better if we just had a dedicated program for running it and for doing calculations, and that you could put inputs into, and it would keep track of everything.
Yeah. Also, it may not have been her butt plug. It may have been her ability to regenerate while she's on the point, but whatever.
Oh.
Either it still felt bad for casual players. Like, both of those were like, oh man, that was like the reason I was playing her as a point tank, you know?
You understand that Crystal's anal aura is just so healing. It's rejuvenating.
Play Paladins Champions of the Realm with me and MJ. We're a hoot.
Yeah.
And it is, gay.
It's so gay. Oh my god. It is what the Overwatch nightmare diversity calculator wishes it
really
could be
is.
in terms
Like,
of, like,
it really fucking
actual
is.
diversity. Yeah. Are you tired of all your characters being white, normatively phonogenic toothpicks? Are you looking at Tracer Overwatch and thinking, this bitch would, like, get chased out of any gay bar in my town? And you want to see some real goddamn representation? No hate to Tracer, except all the hate to Tracer. Love hate. But
why have one lesbian when you can have another one lesbian and a bunch of implied lesbians?
Exactly, and all the bisexuals and pansexuals. Sati Paladins, call me girl. Oh my god.
Sati Paladins.
Ash Paladins.
They need to just be like, they really need to come out and just be like, Ash is a lesbian. I'm so tired of seeing straight Ash porn.
It's true. We need Ash in the lumberjack outfit, like that one girl on TikTok who has the woodcutting sword in Canada.
Yeah. Please just please. Give us a skin where her flag is the lesbian flag and everything else is the same.
Yes. Hire Monica right now, please.
She can also be bi. That's okay. Bi headcanons are allowed. She can be bi. But if she's just saying, if she's bi and you ship her with a man, you have to understand that she pegs him. It has to be a bi. She can be bi. Be a bi for bi relationship. Has to. No matter
who it is. They're a little girl once Ash Paladin stands up at 6'3" over them.
I love her. I'm so very normal about Ashley W. Machine. Anyway.
You're so normal.
So normal about this.
I mean, who am I to criticize? Me and my knife Blorbo. Maeve Paladins do ketamine with me.
I think that's a good time to jump into the ending credits. BXP and the mid-episode break room are brought to you by the Misdirected Mark Network. Here's where you say bing. Bing! Thank you. Become a BXP patron. Patrons get to chat with us directly, special Discord roles, and sometimes exclusive hangouts. You can support us for as little as $1 a month, and we really appreciate any money that you give us at all. It helps us continue to pay Margaret so that she doesn't invade us from the French dimension and cause all sorts of problems. If you would rather support BXP without Patreon, you can always go subscribe to us on Ko-fi instead, ko-fi.com/bonusexp, or you can just buy our stuff. If you go to bxpcast.com/bxpswag, we have a whole merch page where you can get t-shirts, you can get mugs, you can get stickers, you can get cool drawstring bags. We're actually probably gonna be revamping some of that pretty soon. We've got all kinds of cool stuff there. We make money directly when you buy them, so please feel free to do so. And don't forget that BXP is sponsored by Nerdy Kepi. You can get all kinds of rad queer swag. We have a whole section of our own exclusive merch that is on that site, so if you go ahead and buy that from them, we get a cut of those proceeds. If you use code BXPcast at checkout, you get 10% off, and that never expires. You can always go back and get some more cool stuff. So, like, if you went on there and were like, hey, I love this backpack, it's kind of expensive, I'll use the bonus experience code to get myself a nice discount. And then you're like, hey, I wanted to get these shoes, also kind of expensive. You can just use it again, and we get the money both times. We appreciate it. They appreciate it. Go right ahead and do so. And always remember that saying nice things is always free. Go ahead and leave us a good review on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Google, on our YouTube page, which we have now. Wherever, and help us get more listeners. All our episodes will be up on YouTube. Just look for Bonus Experience Podcast on YouTube, and we have playlists of all our... I'm working on getting the rest of the back catalog up, but we have a bunch of the first couple seasons up, and this one will be going up as it is released. Alright. Phew. Okay. If you like Bonus Experience, you will also like Gnomecast. Several gnomes from Gnome Stew get together to talk about gaming topics and themselves in an effort to entertain you, and avoid being thrown in the stew. Alright. MJ.
Yeah.
Where can we find you on the internet?
I used to be on Twitter, but now I exclusively terrorize people on Discord. Amborb, B-O-R-B. You can find me on the BXP Discord if you just want to say hi or ask me more pressing gamer girl bathwater questions. I'm not an expert, but I'll do my best to answer whatever depraved inquiries you might have of me. I'm also on the biggest Exalted Fan Discord and the official OPP Discord. Don't be afraid to say hi.
Excellent. If you want to see more of us, you can go to bxpcast.com, part of the Misdirected Mark Network.
Bing!
If you want to send us an email to ask what the fuck was up with the Gamer Girl bathwater references, or to opine about design and competitive balance, you can send us an email to bonusexpcast@gmail.com. I do check it. I'm not great at responding, but I do check it. We also used to be on Twitter. I don't know how much longer that's lasting. We're also maybe working on getting a Tumblr set up. This is all very up in the air. But if you really want to find the show and you want to link it to your friends, we are on YouTube. You can find us at bxpcast.com, or you can go right to the Misdirected Mark Network and click on the bonus experience icon, and that'll take you to all of the episodes. If you want to chat with us and hang out, we have a Discord. There is an exclusive room for patrons, but the Discord itself is an open community. Come on in, hang out with us. You can go to tinyurl.com/bxpdiscord, and that'll take us right there. I, as always, am your host. I'm Monica. You can find me online. I am Dice-Wizard on Tumblr. I am at Zenith Sun on Twitter, but I'm not using Twitter anymore, so you can follow me, but I ain't updating. That's it. Everybody get out.
Get the fuck out.
Gotta go. Always remember, change it if you want to.
Bye!
Do I have to do this? Ugh, fine. Bonus Experience is written by Monica, and edited by Margaret. Our logo and art is by Nino Studios. Find her on Facebook and Instagram. Our theme song is Reuse Noise with the Light by CDK, and is used under the Attribution Non-Commercial Creative Commons license. BXP is part of the Misdirected Mark Network. Okay, there, I read it. Now bye!